Hello everybody, my name is Jimmy Smith from the YouTube channel here, Wine with Jimmy. This is our session, a presentation on understanding Valpolicella for the WSET Level 3 award in wines. This is an extremely useful session as it's structured, going through all the Valpolicella map area, the geology, the topography, the landscape, how that affects the style. We'll throw in a Google Earth video so you can get a feel for the area, like Verona, Montilesini and Lake Garda, so all key areas around it. And we'll also do, as it says at the bottom there, an included working written question. So we'll work through a partial written question. Very important, as this is the bit globally that people struggle with the most. The tasting has a high percentage, the multiple choice has a high percentage pass rate, but it really is the written question where you'll have to have the most focus on. So they're really useful. I'll work with them through them with you, and I'll explain what the answers are and how to structure the answers to the questions. There is Valpolicella in the picture. It's a picture I took from a trip last year. This is Virgos, and it's Corvina vines. I got some cypress trees there and the kind of foothills of the Montilesini in the background. So let's have a look at what we're looking at. At the bottom there, you'll see all of our social media handles. So my personal one at Wine with Jimmy, which is Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, but then also my two wine schools, West London Wine School, the award-winning school, South London Wine School, both based in London, United Kingdom, and then my wine bar also in London, United Kingdom, which is Streatham Winehouse. Next time you're in London, come and see us for a class, a glass or a bottle. So where are we looking at? We are in North Italy here, and we have some pretty key geographical features around us. In North Italy, and in fact with a lot of Italy, Italy is very much dominated by mountains and hills. About 75% of Italy is mountain or hills. And in the north, that's what we're going to focus on. You'll see on the map on the left-hand side, we have an extensive amount of mountain ranges here, which borders France, Switzerland, Austria over here, because this, of course, is the Alps, which offers protection. It offers altitude. Some vineyards go up to 1,200 meters in altitude in Italy, which is fairly high in the Alto Adige zones and in places like the Val d'Aosta. So the Alps also then do come down as well. They come down into many regions. So we're going to talk about those as they form foothills, which are these the base of these mountains, which we find many vineyards being located. The overall climate of the zone we're looking at would be a continental, moderate continental climate, and we have a pretty significant boundaries here that we need to identify. First of all, you'll see that we have highlighted in circle here the key area that we're looking at. We are looking at the Western Veneto. Okay, so this is Veneto, which if you go all the way to the east, it borders Friuli. You'll go past places like Padua. You'll go towards Venice, for instance, as you go to the east. But we're looking at the west, which is on the border of Lombardia. So it is bordered by Lombardia, but also has Lake Garda, which is the big geographical feature, which offers a pretty significant border line as well. And you can see that quite clearly identified here. It is Italy's largest lake and very famous, very beautiful place, Lake Garda, with cities like Sirmione and Bardolino situated on it. So a lovely, lovely lake there forming the border. I mentioned those mountain ranges, so they come down here. So they're kind of in this, oh, sorry, I've done that in the wrong area here, sorry. So they come down to this kind of area. This is all the mountain parts down here. And this is the Montilesini. Okay, Montilesini. Offering that the foothills as they go down towards our district. And they're the districts we're looking at just below that. So now we've got our geographical features. We have a lake, Lake Garda, and we have the Montilesini, the foothills of the Alps that come down here. We also then have a significant river that runs through this area, which is the Adige River, making its way down from the Alps, as you can see here. So we're coming down here. And then it moves in and goes through the city of Verona, as it then heads its way towards the Adriatic, kind of running in parallel with the Po, not going into the Po, but in parallel. So that is your Adige River. With Verona, the city, we'll have a look at that in a second on the video, at its heart in this district. The blue area is the bit we're focusing on. Of course, that is Valpolicella. But just so you get your whereabouts here, so you can understand things around it, we have just here Soave, and I will do an arrow to identify that in a minute. And we also have up here Bardolino. But it is, of course, and I'll put Valpolicella here, that we're focusing on the most, Valpolicella. Okay, so let me just get some arrows out here so you can clearly see where these are all located. So Bardolino is just this reddish area on the shores of Lake Garda. Soave is just here, beautiful medieval fortress town. But we're, of course, looking at just north of Verona in the region called the Valley of Many Cellars, Valpolicella. So this area it goes right down to the river, so therefore there is a flat area or a flatter area of landscape. But of course it goes into the Monti Lessini, the mountain range towards that northern part, which means therefore there is some aspect here. There is some slope where you'll have slightly poorer soils. And in fact, in the northern part of Valpolicella, the northern part is made up, geologically speaking, of limestone, clay, and there are some volcanic sites as you go down towards the east. So volcanic and limestone and clay, mainly limestone, means that it's a slightly longer growing season here. The wines that are a bit more concentrated in the northern part with bigger acidities. The southern part, that's near the Adige River, and that's near Verona, is actually more kind of gravels and sand. Warmer, and it's warmer because it's next to the river here. The grapes ripen quicker here, and as a style, the wines will tend to have less structure, less acidity, and be fruitier. And often that is the sort of lighter style of the wines in this area. So quite important to do that differentiation. So it says down here there are 3 types of wines that you need to know. It's actually 4 because I put Valpolicella and Classico. So there is Valpolicella, and then there is Valpolicella Classico. Valpolicella is the whole area. Classico is actually the northern part. So I'll put the Classico here. It goes right into this northern part, going into the Monti Lessini. So therefore, the Classico should produce slightly more complex styles. But I put them together because Valpolicella and Valpolicella Classico can be quite similar often. They're very red-fruited. Acidities are higher with Classicos, but they are red-fruited and a little bit herbaceous in style with Valpolicella Classico. Some Valpolicellas can also be semi-carbonically macerated. Please look at our Beaujolais Understanding Beaujolais slide for presentation for understanding that production method. So, okay, so that's your styles. We're going to re-go through these styles again in a second. There is another one, Amarone, the bitter one, Della of Valpolicella, the Valley of Many Cellars. And this is made by the appassimento method, making a dry or off-dry, full-bodied, alcoholic red, made by that passito method, the appassimento method, drying grapes. So Amarones are dry or off-dry, very big. Recioto comes from the old Roman wine Recetum, made the same way, but is a sweet version. In essence, this was always been made. The Recioto della Valpolicella are a sweet red, and the Amarone was actually made by mistake. They didn't have enough sugar in the grapes and ended up making a drier version. So basically, they're the same, but one has sugar and one has, of course, dryness or mainly dryness behind it. Okay, so that's our main areas. Looking at that, I think we're going to have a look at a video now. Is it? Yes, we are. So let's have a quick look at a video. Here we go. Just so you can get your whereabouts and get a feel for the area. I don't like just to be so stale that you just see a map. So there is Italy. We're looking at Rome directly there, but we're going to head north, of course, because we're heading to our region, which is Veneto. There's Venice on the Adriatic, all of its lagoons and bridges. There's Padua, Vicenza, but we're heading across to Verona, which is the city of Valpolicella that we've just been talking about. We're going to focus on the Piazza de Bra, which is the kind of main square, and there is the famous Roman amphitheatre. Other things that Verona is famous for is Juliet's balcony as well. So it is a rather beautiful and pretty place, the balcony not being far from here actually. So that's Verona, the main city. We're now going to go across and I believe look at Lake Garda. So that's actually just looking at the Verona, the Valpolicella region, but let's move to Lake Garda, the largest lake in Italy. You'll see there Sirmione, the gorgeous peninsula town, and then Bardolino on its coast. Now we're looking and heading in towards the foothills of the Monti Lessini. And we're actually focusing on a city called Negra, which is in the Classico area. And this is actually where some of the finer, more complex wines will come from due to the altitude, due to the limestone clay soils found around this area. So there's normally a bit more complexities and quite a lot of Amarone will be made up in this sort of area. But will this then go down towards the Adige River where it becomes flatter? There is the meandering and winding Adige River. There is Verona to your bottom left. And we're looking at some vineyards around this area, which will generally be the lighter, fresher Valpolicella zone. Okay, so wonderful little video there just to get a bit of an idea for the area. Now, the grape variety in play is Corvina. Corvina is a variety which is moderately thin-skinned, there's not much they want you to know actually here about Corvina, but it produces moderate color, low to medium tannins usually, but quite high acidities. But that is dependent on the soil, as we've just been talking about. It is well suited to the appassimento method. Now, you need to know it as passito, but it does have the name appassimento as well. So there you go, appassimento. It's the general process. Passito is the kind of production. And that is the drying of the grapes. So Corvina will be picked early, so it's still got very high acidities behind it. And then it's dried in well-aerated buildings. And these normally are at the top of the winery or actually situated on hillsides around the landscape, where the wind will come through nice and frequently, desiccating the grapes, evaporating some of that moisture in the grape, so the water, and thus concentrating the sugars and the flavors in those grapes. Probably lose something like 30 to 50% of their moisture through this process for a drier style like an Amarone, for instance. It is important to pick it early so the acidities are maintained as quite high, because the production it goes through of this drying process, if the acidities were not too high, the wine will seem quite fat, full and fat, and lacking in any kind of balance. To gain maybe more color or tannin, there are other grapes that Corvina can be blended with. It just mentions local varieties in your textbook. For your own information, things like Rondinella actually lightens it a bit. Corvinone is another one, which is not Corvina. Corvinone, and there are others as well that are used too. Okay, so Corvina as a style, we mentioned low to medium tannins, high acidities, moderate color, all depending on the production like normal. However, we are looking normally at red fruits, red plummy, and then kind of red cherry characteristics. Loads of this in fresh, sappy, sour notes with a standard Valpolicella or a Classico. And then more kind of dried cherries when it gets to an Amarone or the Recioto style. That's the full-bodied dry or off-dry style, and then Recioto is the sweet version. And that will also produce things like raisins and often things like prunes as well. So you often get these very dried characteristics, maybe even some oak, because things like Amarone are nearly always matured in oak, and that may give a bit of cigar as well. Potentially chocolate and licorice characteristics as well. So let's just go through the production method. So this is the passito method or appassimento, as we mentioned. We're going to actually talk about the 4 types that you need to know of Valpolicella. So first of all, let's talk about Valpolicella or Valpolicella Classico, as it's known. In fact, this would be 5 types, because Classico is a separate district of the old heartlands. Remember, Classico is the original boundary of the area. Everything around it is the expansion zone. So Corvina grapes are picked. either by semi-carbonic maceration or by traditional fermentation, it will be made into a very light Valpolicella wine of around 11–12% alcohol. These are light-bodied, acidic, fresh and fruity, best drunk young. But let's take some Corvina grapes, this time on the left-hand side, picking them early, often from very good areas like the northern parts of the Valpolicella zone, like the Classico, and then drying them in well situated and well aerated buildings or lofts where they can then desiccate and shrivel and they lose their moisture content. This means that they become semi-dried grapes. These semi-dried grapes are then pressed, as it mentions here. So the semi-dried grapes are pressed. It says dried, please add semi to it. Semi-dried grapes are pressed, and this will make a full-bodied wine of around 14 to sometimes 16%, and even beyond that in some instances. Now, this production method, sometimes the sugars are so concentrated here that there will be the potential for some residual sugar, RS. That's because they can't fully ferment the product. So imagine that you have semi-dried grapes and the potential will be something like 16.5%, but your yeast only operates up to about 15.5%. This will therefore produce an off-dry style Amarone. So Amarone could be dry or off-dry depending on the production of passito behind it. But they will be big and powerful with concentrated red berry flavors. Acidity will be balanced within that, and the wines will have, those dried fruit characteristics. That's Amarone della Valpolicella. So the two styles we've made so far are really the opposites. One is light and one is very powerful and complex. The next area we're looking at, and I'll just draw some arrows here because now there's quite a few flow charts on this. If we take this bit here, first of all, okay, we've just made an Amarone, or indeed we've taken the skins, we've taken the actual juice off the skins, and what's left behind, the sediment, is a load of skins and pips. So these are ex-semi-dried, ex-Amarone grapes that are semi-dried. These are shriveled skins. These skins are then added, or can be added, to normal Valpolicella. So if you take some of this normal Valpolicella and then throw into it these dried ex-skins of Amarone, and it's actually put into the vat, this will actually do a number of things. It will increase the color, the flavor, and the tannin due to more skin contact. Also, there will be some sugar brought across here from those grape skins, so that will re-ferment. So this second fermentation will create a little bit more alcohol. I mentioned that Valpolicella will sit somewhere around 11 or 12%. By macerating the ex-skins of Amarone, the second fermentation will often bump it up to 13 or 14% alcohol. And with that bit of fermentation, gaining more tannin, more color, and a bit more flavor. So in history, this was repassed through, the juice was repassed through the ex-skins, and that can still be done. And that's why this is today called a ripasso della Valpolicella, as it says here. Repassed, the repassed style. It's basically a baby Amarone for all intents and purposes. This makes, therefore, a wine that's quite close to Amarone, medium to full-bodied, just a little less alcohol normally, and it has similar flavor profile and characters. In your textbooks, it mentions medium to full-bodied, but it will have similar Amarone characteristics to it, and often much more affordable. So really, these are three of your styles, or you can add Classico in there as well, of course. But if we come back to the left-hand side here, and we're talking about making a dry or off-dry red, which is called Amarone, what about if the grapes are so full of sugar that they just won't make a dry or off-dry style? Of course, this is what we call the Recioto della Valpolicella, which is the sweet version, Recioto della Valpolicella. Okay, so this is basically a sweetened Amarone, or really, to be honest, an Amarone is a dried version of Recioto being the famous sweet wine here. So this is a sweet red made from very, very dried grapes. Okay, so they're your major styles of Valpolicella. So let's go through some written questions so you understand how kind of likely questions they would pose with level 3 examination, and then how to structure and answer these. Some of them, it begins off quite easy, as you can see here. Here's a label of Allegrini, Amarone della Valpolicella Classico 2015. State the region of production and the likely main grape variety. So your region of production is Veneto, and your grape variety here is Corvina. That's the one that you are required to know. 2 marks, very easy. Next up, what does the term Classico indicate on an Italian label? Okay, quite a generic question here. The term Classico acknowledges wines that have been made solely from the original classified land. And this includes many of the best wines of the area. Often we say the historical heartland. Wines outside this area are the expansion zones and often lower quality. Okay, so the Classico is the historical heartland. Describe the topography, the landscape, the hills, and geology of the Classico zone in Valpolicella and the effect it has on the wines produced there. Okay. Located in the north of the district, in the foothills of the Monti Lessini, that's the mountain range that comes down, made of limestone, clay, and some volcanic rocks. This slows down ripening due to the soil and the altitude, producing wines of more intensity. Put tannin in there as well as acidity as well. Okay, so that should be enough to get those 6 marks. So you're talking about where it's located. The Monti Lessini is the topography. Let me just draw an arrow through that here, so that's all okay for you to understand. So yeah, the topography you're identifying here as these foothills. Okay, the geology is your soils, which is limestone, clay, and of course some volcanic rocks, and then kind of describing how that will have an effect on the area. You could probably even expand and say that the topography offers better drainage. It offers better aspect, and this can include increase in intensity as well. This red wine in the label is often dry or off-dry, full-bodied with high alcohol and intensely concentrated with red fruits and spice. Answer the following questions. Why could this wine be off-dry? So that's identifying here. So we're saying off-dry. So why? Why is this off-dry? The grapes are so concentrated with sugar due to the passito process, or you could put appassimento, that it can be impossible to fully ferment this wine to dryness. The example I gave you earlier is that maybe 16% the grape's potential is, but I think I said 16.5. But the wine yeast can only ferment up to 15.5% in most instances. So therefore, you will have some sugar left behind. Not much, maybe 5 to 15 grams per litre, but it still will add a little bit of sweetness to it. Okay, and many grapes that are produced, Corvina grapes for Amarone, often can have the potential to be up to 17% ABV, but are bottled at somewhere around 15. So you'll see that that's quite a bit of sugar that can be left behind in the wine as residual sugar. Account for the full body. Okay, account for the full body and high alcohol by describing the production method. Okay, for 5 marks. The passito process is used to increase structure and flavor, probably tannin, by picking grapes early, drying them indoors, and that's in well-aerated buildings, concentrating the sugars and flavors. The result is greater alcohol and fuller body, and that will give you your marks there. Okay, so really you are answering here. You're saying that the general kind of thing is increasing structure and flavor by picking the grapes early. That's the first stage. That's not going to increase the flavor or structure, but it has the acidity to put it through the process. Drying them indoors, that's actually connecting it here, and then concentrating the grape sugars and flavors. Okay, the result is greater alcohol and fuller body. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I hope you have found this video useful, and please, very best of luck for your studies for your WSET Level 3. Please look out for many more of our Understanding Level 3 areas and regions and villages and so on. Have several of them up now to help you with your studies. We are a collection of brilliant wine schools. West London Wine School is award-winning, was awarded the WSET Best Educator in 2018. Do think about coming studying with us, where you have greater access to these online videos through our online portal. Please get in touch if you have any comments or questions, but otherwise please come and see us for a class, a glass or a bottle next time you're in London. Thank you so much.